Well, Broadway fans, we have seen her belt her face off in The Mystery of Edwin Drood and 9 to 5 and Falsettos, and now she is back with her third Tony nomination for the Cher Show. I'm Sam Eckmann. I'm going to try very hard not to do any Cher voice during this interview because I am here with the master. This is Stephanie J. Block. Stephanie, this is such a well-deserved Tony nomination. Congratulations. And when I last talked to you, we were talking about Falsettos, and I believe it was shortly after that musical that you were approached about this show. Can you talk about the timeline on that and how you were first involved?
Yeah, so thank you for having me back, first of all. I was approached, I guess it was either late December or early January of 2017. So I was just finishing up my run of Falsettos in a place of great fartsy-ism. And I loved every second about that experience from start to finish and was just kind of immersed in that. So when the title, The Cher Show, came up, I must admit at face value, it just didn't feel necessarily like my next move. Artistically, I felt something different was headed my way. As a mom, I thought I had been away from my little one for a long time and just needed a bit of a breath. And also my schedule, I was lucky enough to be working on the set of Madam Secretary at the time. So I kind of was already doing double duty. So I had to lovingly pass for that offer. Then about 6 months later, I think around August, I was approached again. And again, something just inside of me kept saying, I don't think this is your job. I don't think this is a fit for you. Part of which was my Broadway debut playing Liza Minnelli and all of sort of the baggage and experience and memories that I was still holding 15 years later. And I'll be honest, quite to my limitations, that as an actress back in my 20s, that I just felt like I had maybe done it already, or I had already faced those fears already. So I said, no, thank you again. And then Jason Moore, our director over at the Cher Show, picked up the phone and called my representation and just said, look, I expect nothing, but I'd love to sit down at a dinner table with her and just, shoot and talk about what ideas might be and the direction in which I need to move forward to see what this might be for her, for us. And that's how it happened. We just sat down, had a really nice meal, and I shared my fears and I shared some of my expectations and I shared the challenges that I had experienced playing Liza. And he shared his vision and he had an answer, or at least a kind and understanding ear for everything I brought to the table. And we decided to at least do the first 2-week workshop. And then we could kind of come back together, reassess, and see if it was something we both wanted to move forward with. Of course, with Cher's blessing and Rick Ellis' blessing. I mean, there was a whole team of people. And that was the beginning. That was the beginning. So September, I guess, early September, that dinner took place of 2017.
Wow, it's funny that you say, there was such hesitation at first, because I don't know if you felt this, but I feel like the entire theater industry of New York, the day that press release came out with your casting, like gay gasped at once. Everyone on my news feed, it was the only thing being shared that day of every theater person.
Really?
Do you feel that excitement, and is the audience interaction with that? Do you feel that excitement on your end?
Now I do. I certainly feel like the Broadway community was rooting for me. I don't know if they knew what the outcome was going to be. I think part of the excitement was, how the hell is she going to pull this off? And we're anxious to see what that might look like. But my real challenge was wondering and not being so fearful as to what the expectations were for the Cher crew, right? Those fans that have followed her for 50 years. Those are the ones that I needed to allow myself to just do the work, not worry about ingratiating myself to them and saying, please love me, please love me, please love me, which I do have. I think all artists have a tendency to do. We put ourselves out there, we do the work, we say, you can take it or leave it. I'm just going to sing my song and say my lines. And if you like me, great, or not. But deep down inside, we're very much, please, you in the back row, please love me, love me. And Cher doesn't play it that way. when Cher steps on stage, now again, her inner life, I'm sure, is quite different than what she puts on. But when she steps on stage, there's no please love me. It's I'm Cher, and either you're going on this ride with me or you're not, you know? So I kind of had to adapt to that. So I certainly feel like the Broadway community is beautifully surprised, which I'm grateful for, and something I always kind of strive to do. I never want to take the next role that is going to be kind of a mimic of what I had done before, or a template of a character that I had done before. There are always similarities, and I'll always be a little piece of Stephanie in every role that I play, but I do like to kind of turn left and right rather quickly with each new job. And that was one thing that my husband said when I was on the fence about doing it. He goes, wouldn't it be great to really surprise a lot of people, whether that be your age and playing a pop goddess, or exposing skin that you've never exposed before, exposing a vulnerability that perhaps you've never exposed before. And it was that sort of awareness of, you're right, I always pride myself on taking a role that's very different, and there isn't one that could be more different than this in my, canon of resume.
Yeah, it is such a transformation. And, we've seen so many Cher impersonators over the years, but you don't approach it like a impersonation. It really feels like a fleshed out, fully living person. You really capture the essence of her. So was there one sort of way in that you found to help you with that?
I must admit, I had to start outward in. I did have to do an impersonation for a long time, and it wasn't necessarily artful. I was very vocal in saying, I'm going to make a huge fool out of myself. I'm probably going to be a terrible, terrible version of many ideas of what Cher, but I had to do that in order to get to sort of the underbelly and humanity of her. So, we're always taught to go from the inside out. This one, I really did have to go the outside in. I had to get the proper hair flips and lips and the broken wrist, so that it wasn't a joke, so that it felt so in my own skin that then I could bring the word humanity. She sat me down one day and she did say, you have to be as much as you as me. You certainly know my story. You've obviously done your homework, but you don't know my walk. Her inner spiritual life walk on this earth. You don't know how I felt when this happened, and nor could I expect you to know what that is. But you are of a certain age. You are a woman. You are a mother. You've had disappointments. You've had betrayals. And certainly I, as an actress, knew all these things at a basic level. But for Cher to then say, go be you while be me, was a real allowance. And I went with it. And I think that's where it kind of allowed me to cross over from being an impersonator to being a full flesh and blood, hopefully 3-dimensional human, that you don't just say, oh, look at the sparkles and the wigs and the gestures and mannerisms, that there's a beautiful human person. And Rick Ellis did develop, like, the last 20 minutes of our play, they do turn corners like that, right? I mean, it really takes you to a place that, again, I don't think people are expecting when they come to see the Cher Show.
Yeah, and on top of all that, there's 3 of you playing Cher. You also have Michaela and Teal Wicks.
I love
and so do the 3 of you have to sort of confer on physicality or certain ways you're going to play things?
Totally. Because we all can look at Cher but interpret them physically in a different way. So we have bookmarks throughout the show where all 3 of us will flip the hair at the same time. All 3 of us will be standing on, a left leg with kind of the right leg just kind of out and propped. The audience may not gauge that as they're watching the play, but for us, it is such a beautiful sort of connective tissue. I started to do in my show when I was exacerbated. Michaela then adopted that, as did Teal. There's a line in the show that said I had to bite my inner cheek as to not start to cry. And so that now I start doing that. Michaela's doing that. There are some really beautiful little moments. Somehow when we touch a finger or do a little thing, again, is anybody going to pick that up? Not necessarily, but for us, it certainly connects the 3 of us and only, strengthens the sisterhood. Vocally, the same thing. We were all on different journeys when trying to find Cher's speaking and singing voice. Singing voice was easier just because there's so much footage of her on YouTube, or you can listen to recordings and then kind of parrot the sound, mimic the sound. But when it came to the script and words that we had not heard her say or could not, just research back, we all had to sit down, and that's actually where the word therapy came from. We would do a lot of table work together and read a lot of these scenes as monologues, as if Star was reading the whole scene or Babe was reading the whole scene. And we found a lot of things that way, and certain sounds that we would all connect with. So yeah. And we look at each other all the time and say, no one will know what this is except the three of us. No one really knows what this is except the three of us. And that little secret in and of itself is a beautiful sort of connecting thing.
Yeah. You talked about, when you were speaking before, about like, it's so different for you, this role, and you're like showing this skin. And it's, this unfortunate thing in all entertainment industry where like sometimes outside of their 20s, like women don't get to be sexy, and not just sexy in the way you look, but like sexy seeing someone who like really gets to sit in her power. And as Cher, you totally get to do that. Like she refers to herself as a warrior goddess warrior. And so what does that do to you? Because it's a kind of a thrill in the audience to see you, knowing your past work especially, and see you strut out in these crazy outfits as this iconic pop star.
It's really something, because I will say that there has been more ownership of myself because I have been playing Cher. She has given me this extraordinary freedom and acceptance, and sort of, much like she doesn't ask permission, I will always be Stephanie. I will always be polite and respectful. But I have decided to voice things more than before. I have decided that I can wear maybe a producer hat at this moment, or a director hat at this moment, or they don't necessarily need to take what I'm putting out there, but I have found this great freedom in allowing myself to at least put it out there. I won't kid you. In the daylight, am I going to be walking around at the beach with a skimpy little thing with my ass cheeks hanging out? No, I'm still going to be Stephanie the mom. But when I step on stage, it really is a different creature. And there is a comfort that I have grown to embrace, and if I can say love, about these costumes. I was very nervous at first, and Bob recognized that. And he's like, you've got to get over it. I don't know how. I can't tell you how. Cher has always kind of, maybe from here up, she has questioned and redefined what is beauty. And I think she would be the first to say, my mother was blonde, my sister was blonde. That was beautiful. I wasn't sure, but from here down, that woman always knew and owned and showed a great strength, because I think she knew the power of her neck down. That is a physical appearance I will never be able to copy. God gave us very different vessels. So I had to just start embracing my vessel, trust Bob in knowing that he would show all my best parts and hide those parts that still aren't ready to be seen on the Broadway. And I think I'm doing it. And I think because of the construct of the show, because I thrust myself up on stage on a trap and immediately have to be this woman, there is no sort of, massaging or finagling the audience into something. It's right away. It's bam. So I set myself up a couple minutes before, and then we're off and running from the immediate downbeat of that. I like to think I own at least my character right off the bat.
Mm-hmm. Well, it happens. And speaking of those Bob Mackie costumes, there is, I can't even count how many you have at this point, but there's the whole Oscar bit where you're cycling through all the dresses she wore, the Academy Awards.
Yeah.
How difficult is it to get all of those quick changes that they have to happen in seconds?
Yeah, it was a thing. Our tech process was very much about those costume changes. On the page, they look completely impossible. You're reading the script and you go, I'm sorry, he's going to sing 2 lines of a song and I'm popping back up. Yeah, well, we'll see how that happens. Sure enough, we were able to make it happen. The beauty and the curse of Bob is that his designs are not just a quick magnet or Velcro and you're off. It is pieces, wig, headpiece. You know, they're like 7 or 8 pieces and shoe changes. So I do have, there are 30 costumes. I have 29 quick changes. My second act is quite complicated. My dresser, who I have worked with, her name is Kate Sorg, and she's been with me for almost 8 years. So she was able to go through the presentation period out of town in Chicago, all of my fittings from New York, and get me set up to this point. She's now with Audra. She left me for a beautiful play that has 2 costumes and the rest of the play's naked. I understand. And so now I have this awesome woman named Mel Hansen. But if you are not a true star dresser, this track just was not, my part wouldn't happen without this sort of lead person who keeps me calm. If something goes wrong, they immediately know how to change it. And you're right, my changes go from anywhere from 3 people helping me to 9 people helping me. And it's tough. It's tough on the body. It's tough on the nerves, because if one little thing goes down, it's a domino effect and you may miss an entrance. It hasn't been less, it can run smoother, but it doesn't mean it's any less complicated, even now 170 some performances in, you know.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of numbers I would want to talk to you about, but one that really stands out is You Haven't Seen the Last of Me in the show, because I mean, you end on this killer note. There's you know, it's incredibly powerful, but there's vulnerability underneath it, even though it's kind of a defiant song. Can you just walk us through what it's like to sing that?
It's interesting because the path of that song has changed greatly from the presentation to Chicago to now. It was kind of much earlier in the show in Chicago, and it started with Michaela. After her, you know, she had quite a difficult childhood, and Cher's father that she loved so much left. It started with Michaela kind of getting her strength up, and You Haven't Seen the Last of Me. It didn't earn what they were hoping to earn, because the audience desperately wanted to see the struggles of this woman, ups and downs, and being beaten, and her resilience. And the song, even though it was still sung brilliantly, it was staged brilliantly, it just wasn't getting the same payoff. So when it came to Broadway, they understood that somehow they needed to make that the 11 o'clock number. Then it became a solo number, and it was just me. And again, we were running it in rehearsals, and the amount of applause was still tremendous, but how do you say, you can feel an audience's investment and heart, right? You can still clap and go, yeah, girl, sing, sing. But the sort of wasn't there. And we needed to find that. And it was bringing back the other 2 Chers and them all sort of counseling and commiserating with one another. And that's where the audience started to really get on board and see themselves and Cher's whole journey and the tears. And so I'm glad it went through so many incarnations, because they really did find that the payoff and earning that song, they finally found it in kind of the 11th hour of creating it here for Broadway.
Yeah, it works beautifully. Well, before I let you go, I wanted to talk about, you know, before, this is your first actual Tony nomination where you're still in a show that's still open, because and so that has to be a whole different experience for this season. You've already taken home the Outer Critics Circle Award, so congratulations. What is it like for you now that you get to, like, that you have to do all this while you're doing a show?
You know, it's interesting because there is such a beautiful payoff when you go to the theater and you think, I'm still being acknowledged for the work that I'm doing in real time. There is a great pride, sense of achievement, and there's also great exhaustion. I mean, there's no way to kind of talk around that. I keep trying to counseling myself, saying that you can be ridiculously grateful and ridiculously exhausted at the same time. They're not mutually exclusive, right? And every time I say, man, am I tired? That's not a complaint. It's just kind of part of the whole beautiful package that makes being a mom, being a wife, 8 shows a week, being acknowledged and showing up and thanking people. And I mean, I am eating up every second and knowing that I'm living the best of days. But dear God, am I tired?
Well, it seems like it's all worth it right now.
It's all worth it. In fact, you're finding me as we're just coming back from the Tony luncheon. So, you know, I was 65 floors up overlooking New York and really got misty-eyed going, this is everything I've ever dreamed. This is a city that it's really kind of impossible to even get a job as a working actor on the stage. And here I am sitting at a table with Celia Keenan Bolger and Rachel Chafkin, and it went on, and Brian Stokes Mitchell is addressing us, and Katarina Link, and you just think, I know how I got here, and yet I'm still questioning, how did I get here, you know? And again, they're not mutually exclusive. You can have this sort of convergence of so many emotions and live in it. And I hope it will only make me a better actor and a better mom and a better person.
Well, congratulations, and wish you the best of luck with this show and the rest of your run in it. It's a great achievement, and maybe the third time will be the charm for the Tonys.
Thanks so much. And if I ever get nominated again, I can only do this interview with you, my friend.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Well, I'll be there for it whenever it happens. Everyone watching at home, hit that subscribe button and make sure you keep in touch with all of our updates during Tony season. Stephanie, thanks again for joining me.
Thank you.